Have you ever heard scratching in your walls? Or maybe an open door you swore you closed? Perhaps your basement is a little eerie. These haunted house stories from Redditors will show you what living in a real haunted house is like. From friendly, happy ghosts to horrifying and unexplained happenings. Some of these hauntings went away with a blessing or sage, but others were so intense that the poor victims were forced to move out. I worked in a building in my local town that was claimed to be haunted, but I didn't believe it. The downstairs was a wine bar cafe, and the upstairs was an apartment. I worked there for almost 3 years in high school. I would hear the kids playing upstairs all the time. I'd hear the floor squeak above me. I could hear water running in the shower. I'd hear voices up there and even singing. Lots of singing. One day I was talking to my boss about how loud the people upstairs were during a private party, so that she could handle the problem. She then tells me no one has lived up there since the accident. There are no water lines upstairs, and it's old dusty storage. She called the police thinking there may be squatters, but there were no signs of life and undisturbed dust on everything. The place hadn't even been entered since she bought the place 10 years earlier. My coworkers confirmed my story when the boss interviewed them about it. The accident: a mom hit her head in the shower and died. Her 2 small children starved to death with no one there to take care of them. Story was confirmed by locals. My parents' house is haunted. The family who lived there before us were super crazy people. While doing repairs on the house, we found notes in the walls. One day, the husband just up and leaves. Then kids leave and the wife passes alone in the house. In my room, we found out when we replaced my carpet. A 6-foot long by 2-foot wide piece of flooring was removed and replaced. I never knew what had happened to her until just recently. The things I've experienced were whispering noises in the corners of the walls, cold hands touching my shoulders, things being knocked down off the walls, and feeling like there's somebody standing next to me or peering over my shoulder. I'm glad I don't live there anymore. Purchased this small house to try to appease my boyfriend of the time. Was always uncomfortable living there. After 2 years, I asked him to move out as our relationship was going nowhere pretty fast. After he moved out, I started getting the creeps. The cabinets in the kitchen were homemade and not done that great, and under the staining on the cabinet doors, sometimes I could see some sort of writing that looked like it was done with a can of spray paint. Other times I could not see it at all. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom because at night I would wake up and see some sort of dark shape in the short hallway leading from the bedroom to the bathroom. It would make the hair on the back of my neck stand up. One night I woke up because I heard some sort of noise that sounded like someone tapping on something metallic. Then I felt a coldness on the back of my neck that slowly extended into my scalp and down my spine. That really was scary, and I just prayed and prayed, and finally the cold hands slowly went away. After that, I started sleeping in the area next to the kitchen, in front of the standalone heater, and felt a bit safer. I replaced the cabinets, and that made things better. I was happy to move out. I lived in a house with a dark history for a while going through college. The house was eerie to begin with, but the stain locked into the wood floor was really a nice addition to the ambience. Anyway, I had an ex-girlfriend who would dream of horrifying things there. As in, yelling, breathing, sweating, and feeling the dreams happen. She once dreamed of a man coming right up the stairs and stabbing her repeatedly in the stomach. I was next to her when I was watching her and couldn't wake her up for a good 10 minutes, and I was shaking her very much. Nothing in this era of my life was okay. Her dreams went back to normal once we moved out. It's not really scary, but I moved into this old apartment building when I was just out of college. Just a 1-bedroom, wood floors, paint peeling off the walls, old fixtures, with a long hallway leading to the kitchen and sitting room from the bedroom. The first night, I'm lying in bed and hear what I think must be the cabinets opening and closing. I hear the silverware glassware clink together. I should also mention this apartment is in a somewhat sketchy area, so I bolt out of bed and rush into the kitchen, flick on the lights, and find nothing, except one of the cabinets that I knew I closed earlier open wide. From then on at night, there was often the sound of someone moving around the kitchen, opening and closing drawers, almost as if they were confused and bumping into things in the dark. This would happen about once or twice a week, and over time I got used to it. One night, I was fast asleep, and the noises woke me up. A loud bang, and then someone opening a drawer slowly, and then footsteps creaking on the floorboards in the kitchen like they were going around and around in circles. Lying in bed, I said loudly, "I don't mind if you're here, but I'm trying to get some sleep. Could you please keep it down at night?" The footsteps stopped immediately, and I never heard the sounds again. I have a few stories, but these three bothered me the most. One night, before I washed dishes, I placed my newborn in the center of my bed and make sure there is nothing around her. She can't move and is swaddled. I step out of the room into the kitchen that is right outside the bedroom to get started. After about 5 minutes, I decided to go check on her. I walk into the room, and she has a burp cloth on her face. There was no way for her to have accidentally grabbed onto the cloth, as she was still swaddled and couldn't move. One night in the same bedroom, I'm lying down with my newborn, and I close my eyes. I didn't fall asleep, I was just relaxing a little. Then, all of a sudden, I feel a slap across my face. I felt the shape of my hand specifically. I lived with my mom, and I told her what happened. She told me she had felt the same thing as well, but she doesn't like bringing attention to things like that, so she ignored it and didn't say anything. And lastly, one night I am in the same room waiting for my boyfriend to get out of the shower. It's just the two of us home, and there's nothing on. I'm lying on my bed, reading a book, when all of a sudden I hear a giggle right outside my door. I thought it was my boyfriend, so I stepped into the kitchen, and it's empty. I check the next room, which also leads to the bathroom, and it's empty. So I knock on the bathroom doorstep inside to see my boyfriend shampooing. I ask him if he is messing with me, and if he heard anything. He denies both, so at that point, I start to freak out. I'm scared, so I sit in the room right outside the bathroom and wait for him to finish. But I hear the giggle again from the kitchen, which is the next room over. So I know at that point, it's definitely not him, and I run into the bathroom till he is done with his shower. It was really hard to live there. Washing dishes in the kitchen. To my immediate right was the door that went downstairs to our basement. It was late afternoon, and I was home alone. I started to hear loud, slow, deliberate footsteps coming up the stairs. My immediate thought was someone broke in through a basement window, so instead of running like I should have, I grabbed a kitchen knife thinking I was going to stop some dude from hurting myself or the family dog. The steps stopped right at the door, and then it flung open. And just like some stupid scary movie, nothing was there. I was able to check the house after my heart rate went back to normal, and I made sure my pants weren't soiled, and found absolutely no explanation. There were multiple odd happenings in the house, but we always joked about it or ignored it. I didn't tell anyone because my siblings were younger, and my parents would say it was nothing or an imagination run wild. Funnily enough, my brother had the same thing happen to him several years later. I was shocked when he told me, and he was relieved when I told him I had the same experience, so not sure what to make of it. I theorized that if it is a ghost spirit or whatever, it's just bored and wanted some attention or fun. The idea of an actual person breaking into the house still terrifies me more. The house I grew up in was haunted by a little Victorian girl. I used to play with her when I was about 4. I still remember her. She had long brown hair, a white cotton night dress, and hat on. If I told my mom she was with me, my mom would refuse to come in the room. A few years ago, my brother saw her walk into the bedroom I used to play with her in. Most recently, my sister saw her out the corner of her walk along the hall and knocked all the clothes off the banister. My mom told me recently when she went to a medium years ago. He told her there was a spirit girl in our house, and she was sad that my mom never acknowledged her, and she should give her a name and a place in the house. My mom named her Can't Remember What, and a tiny rocking chair my granddad built was her place in the house. He also told her to say hello and goodbye to her, and admits she still does to this day. There was also some spirit that hated me in another of the bedrooms that was mine while I was a teenager. I always sensed it was an old man. He would throw toys at me, pull on the bed springs, and flick all the buttons on my CD player on and off. The room always felt very oppressive, and I always suffered from sleep paralysis in there from being very little. The last time it was my bedroom, I was 17. It was a summer night, and I woke up under the covers face down in the pillow, unable to move, and felt like I was about to die, and could hear something moving quickly around the room and tapping on the CD player. All of a sudden, my mom bursts into the bedroom asking if I'm awake, and she had heard someone shouting her name from the garden. Her bedroom window was open. I've also found photos of me at the end of the garden that were all burnt with no explanation. The house where I grew up was creepy, no ghosts, but something was off. There had been a few tragedies in our families. Then my sister's friend's mom just blurted out that there was an evil spirit there. Actually, a low vibration entity. Others made comments about the vibe in the house. I lived there alone after my parents passed, and often felt like I needed to be quiet. A friend and I saw a broom move, odd sounds, someone knocking at the door in the middle of the night, dogs growling at something behind me as I came up the basement stairs. I had a friend come in and smudge the whole place with sage and copal. It changed everything. House calm, peaceful, and orderly, and I stopped feeling like I needed to tiptoe around. I lived in an old building, one of the oldest in the tiny town that was still standing. It had a creepy old service elevator in the back that supposedly was used to move bodies when the building was originally a funeral home and mortuary. The place was messed up. No one else lived in the building, but you could hear all sorts of weird noises, voices, strange laughter. I would see shadows of people and think my GF had come home and brought a friend over, and I'd look around, and there would be no one there, and then the shadows were gone. I would wake up feeling like someone was in the room with me, and feel someone breathing on my skin. Whatever was going on, it would drive our cats crazy. They would start howling and running around and scratching all the walls. I play the banjo. I also live in an apartment that served as a shoe factory in the early 20th century. I have a tap dancing ghost. I live in the bottom part of a duplex, and sometimes when I'm playing banjo, I will hear some tapping on the ceiling, even when my upstairs roommate isn't home. If I slow down the tempo, the tapping slows down to match it. If I speed up, the same thing happens. My girlfriend has witnessed this, so I'm not crazy. I like to think it's a friendly ghost of an Irish factory worker, or just a music lover from the folk music days of the 1900s to the 30s. They hear some of their old jams and do some step dancing along to the beat. It's not scary at all. It's actually kind of sweet to think about. I've been awakened several times by someone or something tapping on my shoulder. Real enough so that I thought it was my wife and answered, "What?" I'm sure it's just a muscle spasm or something, but it's creepy as hell. My dogs also stare at the top of the stairs like someone is there. Also creepy. So, I used to live in a really old house in Tuscany, right in the middle of the countryside. My parents bought it for almost nothing. It was the late 80s and remodeled it all by themselves. There was no water nor electricity. We lived there until I was 7, and then we moved to the town nearby, so my memories are kind of foggy. But once I told my parents that on a school trip, I tried using a Ouija board, and they got upset, so they told me that our old house was pretty haunted. The common stuff was things moving and disappearing. My parents' bedroom was on the second floor, but I can't remember them ever sleeping in it. The common excuse was that in winter it was too cold, and during summer way too hot. The truth is that the bedroom was the most haunted room. One night my father woke up to see something sitting at the end of the bed. There was always a strange feeling in that particular room, and definitely not a nice feeling. Another episode happened to my mother. I'm the third child. My brother and sister are twins and are older than me. My mother used to place them one by one on the lowest stairs, going up to the bedrooms to pick them up easily. At the same time, twins are difficult. One time she was doing that, and as soon as she placed my brother on the stair, something pulled him and threw him like a bullet. Good thing my mother had good reflexes, and she caught him just in time. I still miss that house very much. Maybe not the house, but the feeling of living in the countryside. What's certain is that whatever lived in that house with us was not nice, to say the least. Not my house, but my best friend's condo is apparently open season for spiritual activities. Not to mention, her old work had some creepy demons, which scares me to no end. Her old work was this alternative medicine place, and all the rooms were connected by a very long and winding hallway with a locked back door, which is where it hung out. During the day it was fine, but once sunset rolled around it would start to make noises. It wouldn't go to a certain place, and never went into the room that was used for Reiki. She told me that once you got to a certain place in the hallway, it would come up and start following you. Apparently, it was a very tall, very dark entity that would crouch down and pretend it was a little girl. Everyone who believed in that stuff was scared of it, and I guess it was strong enough to physically harm you. She has a lot of experience with entities and demons, has even exorcised a few, but even that scared the crap out of her. My mom's close friend lived in a locally notorious haunted house. It was downtown and at the turn of the century. It was built by a local doctor who killed his wife, then shot himself. Anyways, the house has always had an odd reputation. The guy had it built with a bunch of secret passages and doors and such. It's owned by an older guy now who runs a creepy antique shop out of it. When my mother's friend lived there, she had quite a few odd things happen. Some of them could probably be dismissed as old house, weird sounds, and poor old wiring issues. A lot of the house's lights and the TV would randomly turn on. Some of them were quite strange, however. On a few occasions, she found handprints that were some sort of weird black sludge all over her drapes. She was the only one who lived there. The house has one of those old-time mini balconies that opens from the master bedroom. She walked into the room one night and saw a black silhouette standing there. That spot is supposedly where the doctor shot his wife. The friend was devout Catholic and had a priest come to the house and bless it. Apparently all the weird happenings stopped after that. There may have been more that happened after that, but it's been years ago now, and her friend passed away a few years after it all happened. Two of my roommates are convinced our house is haunted. I'm still pretty skeptical though. It's a one-story house, but it's built on a hill, so the back of the house is almost 2 stories, whereas the front is 1, since the hill slopes down. One side of the house has all the bedrooms, and the roommate who sleeps in the room closest to the front says he had been woken up by banging noises on the window right next to his bed. I chalked it off to someone banging on the window since it is close to the ground, or a branch from a bush. Then my second roommate says she is hearing banging noises on her windows as well, but she's farther back from the front of the house. The windows in her room are about 8 feet off the ground, and there are no branches or plants near them, just our neighbor's driveway. So if it was a person trying to get in, they chose literally the most out of the way and difficult entrance. Especially considering there are 2 other entrances to the house that are doors, one of which has a window next to it. Maybe the banging has something to do with the temperature difference inside the house versus outside, causing the windows to make the noise. Except the original roommate who complained about the banging has French doors to his room. He has been complaining that the banging sounds like it is now coming from the French doors, which are inside the house completely and shouldn't be affected by outside temperatures. After this, we began to notice that doors would be left open when we thought we had them closed, and stuff ends up in weird places or randomly goes missing. I'm still not convinced personally, since 4 people live there, and the house is almost 100 years old, so strange stuff is bound to happen. I personally like to refer to the hypothetical ghost as DJ Ghost, since I jokingly requested a song from a playlist and happened to play it next. Currently, half of the people who live there are scared, while the other half keep making DJ Ghost jokes, so we'll see, I guess. When I was little, I walked into a bathroom to see a blinding white flash, turned and immediately ran away. My dad caught me and started yelling at me, wondering where I had been for the last 2 hours. Strongly disbelieve it was aliens. I vaguely have memories of a floating girl with dark hair and white clothes talking to me, but that's it. This was in broad daylight. Other times, it was just your typical shenanigans, hearing voices calling your name, thinking a family member is in a certain room and you can swear the lights are on, but when you round the corner the room is dark and empty, feeling something play with my hair, hearing footsteps when no one is home. That kind of thing. I almost forgot, but at night shadows shaped like people, not really shadow people, but like flat shadows on the wall, would move and speak to me. This was definitely not sleep paralysis. I have experienced that too, but this was different. I could still move around, and it always happened when I was still awake and just trying to fall asleep. One time, the shadows put on a sort of horror-themed play, a whole hour or so long affair, and afterwards demanded applause. It was definitely like they or it or whatever was trying to terrify me. My husband works nights, so I'm alone Monday through Friday. So I'm in the bathroom, pinning my hair up, when I hear a huge slap on the side of the bathtub. I power walk out of the bathroom, past my kitchen to get to my living room. As I walk past the kitchen, another huge slap, this time on the side of the fridge. I continue power walking to the living room and huddle up with my dog on the couch. He's shaking, and I feel an intense sense of fear and the need to leave. But we only have one car, and I had no one close by to come get me, so I called a friend. It was winter, and I stayed outside as long as I could. I reluctantly come back in and resume sitting on the couch. I begin to hear knocking in the corner behind my couch. I'm trying my best not to show fear, but I'm terrified. I felt like the living room and adjacent laundry room were safe. I began to hear something insane. It sounds like something with hooves is galloping down the hall. I've never whimpered out of fear before, but I did then. I just crawled back to the couch and waited for my husband to get home. I dealt with this from 7 o'clock to 11:30 at night. It was awful.